Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe was the main factor that led up to the Civil War. I think this because no one really knew exactly how the slaves were treated or what it felt like to be an actual slave. The Compromise of 1850 was made just before Uncle Tom's Cabin. It gave the Union California, enforced the Fugitive Slave Act, and gave popular sovereignty to the Utah and New Mexico territory. The Compromise of 1850 deepened sectionalism and started to anger both the North and South. However, this did not spark the torch in what started the Civil War. Harriet Beecher Stowe was born on June 14, 1811. She wrote poems, biographical sketches, and children's books before writing Uncle Tom's Cabin. Harriet and her husband then moved to Maine, and after she heard the Fugitive Slave Act from the Compromise of 1850, she decided it was time to write Uncle Tom's Cabin. It began as a serial for the Washington Anti-Slavery Weekly, the National Era. It gained interest to the public because it was on the issue of slavery, and it was deeply controversial. Harriet Beecher Stowe's anti-slavery story was published in 40 installments over the next 10 months. For her story, Mrs. Stowe was paid $300. 300,000 copies were sold in the first year, and about 2 million copies were sold worldwide by 1857. For a 3-month period, Harriet received $10,000 in royalties. Through Harriet Beecher Stowe's words, Uncle Tom's Cabin gave a visual of what happened to the slaves and how they were treated. In writing the book, Stowe drew on her personal experiences. She was familiar with slavery, the anti-slavery movement, and the Underground Railroad because Kentucky, across the Ohio River from Cincinnati, Ohio, where Stowe had lived, was a slave state. While Stowe lived in Cincinnati, she heard personal stories from runaway slaves and stories from abolitionists. The abolitionist movement was a main emphasis in the book, and it was a major reason for the start to the Civil War. The abolitionists started to go at the South more and more. The North now had first-hand accounts of what happened in the South with slaves and wanted to put a stop to it. The North also set up a plan to stop slavery in the South. Even President Abraham Lincoln said, "So this is the little lady who made this big war," when he met with her in 1862. Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin was definitely the factor that led to the Civil War. It deepened sectionalism, got people's attention about slavery in the South, and made people in the North realize this was not acceptable and needed to be